Deep in the mountain of Ilokas there was a cave. Inside the cave lived a baby centaur named Chiron, who many years ago was given a baby who escaped. Chiron raised the baby and renamed him Jason. His original name was Diomedes. There were many things in store for Jason: fame and glory, a long, long journey, pain, tragedy, a chance to wear the crown. Those were Chiron's words. Chiron told him long ago his grandparents ruled Ilokas, but an evil man named Peleus seized the kingdom and threw his grandparents in jail. Jason's job was to reclaim his kingdom. Once he set off on his journey, he realized there was a river between himself and the kingdom. Out of nowhere, an old lady appeared and asked for him to help her across the river. He agreed. "You won't regret this," were her words. And he didn't, because little did he know, the old lady was the goddess Hera in form of a human. He slowly walked into the water. He felt the current pulling him. The lady was heavy. He took a step up and tried not to slip. The current was making his feet loose. The sand was slipping beneath him. Step by step, he slowly walked through the river. Once he was safely up the river, he put the old lady down. "There you go," he said, and the lady was gone. He had passed the test, and he had earned Hera's trust and guidance along his long and difficult journey. He got to the kingdom. He walked up to the palace where Peleus sat on his throne and asked him politely if he would just hand over his kingdom. Peleus could have said, "Oh, sure, I'll give you my whole kingdom." But nope. Peleus knew he couldn't just tell Jason to leave. No, he had to get rid of him. He had to give him a quest he would surely die trying to complete. "Get the golden fleece from the kingdom of Colchis and bring it to me. Then I'll give you my kingdom." Gasps were heard all around when he said this. The fleece in Colchis was guarded by a dragon and hung on a very, very tall tree. Jason accepted the challenge nervously and set off to find members to be on the ship. He got many famous Greeks for his crew. Jason got Hercules for rowing, Atalanta for her great archery, and many more. Soon they set off on their journey, a journey that is known to be impossible. They set off on a ship called the Argo, and they were the Argonauts. The ship departed. They were at sail for 5 days. Soon they realized they were out of food. They couldn't keep food for more than 5 days because they had no refrigerator in Greek times. They needed to stop for food, so they stopped on the island of Lemnos. Right as they stopped, a group of armed, fierce warriors approached. The Argonauts were drawing their swords and bows. When they realized they might be friendly, Jason told them who he and the Argonauts were. The warriors took off their masks, but only female faces were seen. What Jason did not know was that the women had husbands. As a punishment from the gods, they were given a bad smell, so their husbands left. The smell had gone away over time, and now they're looking for new husbands. The Argonauts stayed there for 4 days, and Jason was planning on marrying the leader, but the Argonauts had to get back on their quest. They set off to continue. Later that day, they decided they needed to stop for dinner. When the Argo came to a stop, as soon as they walked out, King Cyzicus came right out to greet them. He welcomed them to his kingdom, for it was his wedding day, and he was in a good mood. They went to the wedding, and they were stuffed after it. They went back to the Argo to set off. When they were all on their ship, a massive boulder came flying into the water. "What the heck?" screamed Atalanta, for she was tossed off the ship and thrown into the water by the impact. They looked up onto the mountain and saw a giant, huge, humongous Cyclops whirling another rock at them. Atalanta and the archers all shot them down. Soon the Cyclops' dead body came tumbling down into the water. The Argo's sail was ripped from the waves, so they decided to stay for the night. King Cyzicus had no problem with that. The next morning, they set off on to the Argo that had been fixed by the king's servants. Before they could leave, an army of armed warriors came charging toward them. Everyone in the Argo jumped down and slaughtered all of the warriors. Jason took off the helmet of the dead leader and realized it was King Cyzicus. They hadn't known they were fighting each other because they both had armor covering them. "No!" wailed Jason. "He had been so nice to us." It was too late to save the king's wife. The second she heard her husband was dead, she ran into the forest and hung herself on a tree. Later that day there was a storm, and the waves were pounding the ship. Sailors were being thrown around the deck like toys. The Argo was being shaken around everywhere and were thrown off track. The next day, when the storm passed and needed directions to Colchis because they had gotten lost in the storm. They stopped at a kingdom. They walked in and the servants led them to a king named Phineas. He appeared to be blind. Jason asked him if he would give him directions. He said, "Sure, if you fix my problem." Jason asked what his problem was. "You'll see," he said. The servants brought in food. Before anyone could eat, two very large bird things swept in and magically flew through the ceiling. They came down and stole all the food. "You see my problem?" said King Phineas. "Those are the harpies. They were sent as a punishment from the god Zeus. The god gave me a choice. Either lose your sense of sight or have a short life. I choose to lose my sight. The god of the sun, Helios, was infuriated that I would choose a long life over seeing the sunlight he provided. So he sent the harpies to make my life horrible as a punishment. I'm lucky to get a bite of food a day with them around. I struggle to stay alive. I'm starving. If you help me with my harpy problem, I'll help you with the directions." Atalanta had an idea. Atalanta asked the servants for more food. Phineas tried to eat. He was about to take a bite when the harpies appeared. Atalanta and the other archers shot arrows at the harpies and chased them around. The winged brothers flew after them and chasing them through the sky with swords. The harpies flew away and never came back. Phineas feasted, for it had been years since he had ate more than a bite a day. He gave Jason directions and they set off. They knew what they were getting into. They had to cross the Black Sea, which no one had ever crossed because it was guarded by two huge rocks that clashed together about every 10 seconds. Anyone who tried to get through before they slammed together was crushed by them. Jason had to get through them. That was the only way to get to the fleece. He prayed to Hera to help him cross. They set off into the Black Sea. The waves were frantic, more frantic than they've ever seen. It never stopped storming in the Black Sea. Never. They approached two rocks. The rocks slammed together and then drifted apart again. Once again, they slammed together with incredible impact and drifted apart again. The Argonauts had to wait until the timing was just right. The rocks slammed together and opened up. The ship darted between the two rocks. They started to close in. The ship was halfway out. The exit was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They were almost out. "We're not going to make it!" cried Atalanta. "Yes, we are!" screamed Hercules. The crack was about to close. The ship wasn't close enough. All at once, the rowers started rowing harder. The ship went so fast it darted out just before the rocks closed. They were stunned by the crash behind them. They were the first ever to cross the Black Sea. Later that day, they stopped on an island to rest to get a bite to eat. Before any of them could step off the Argo, a dark cloud approached them. At the time, no one could tell what it was, but Atalanta was the first to say, "Symphalian birds!" Symphalian birds were birds with metal feathers that are very hostile to people. They often shoot their metal feathers at humans to kill them, and then they eat them. The only way to kill them is to shoot them with an arrow soaked in dragon's blood. Luckily, all of the archers brought dragon blood just in case. The metal bird shot a feather at the ship and ripped the sail. Another one of them shot a feather at Atalanta and nailed her in the shoulder. "Ow!" she screamed. The archer shot every last one of them down until they fell into the water. Later that day, more horror struck. Typhoeus and Castor were set off to get water. When they stopped at the lake, a boar came out of nowhere and horned Typhoeus, and then it retreated back to the bushes. Castor was ready when it came back out. He shot the boar straight in the heart. It lay there dead. It was too late for Typhoeus, who was bleeding from the boar smash. By the time Jason and the crew got Castor's distress signal, Typhoeus was dead. The next day, they set back on their journey to Colchis. A couple of hours later, the Argo arrived at Colchis. The fleece was so close. Meanwhile, in Mount Olympus, Hera knew the king of Colchis wouldn't just give Jason the fleece so easily. She would do anything to help Jason after he heroically carried her across the river. So she talked to Eros the Cupid. He shot Medea, the king of Colchis' daughter, with a love arrow so that she would help Jason get the fleece. He walked into the king's throne room and asked for the golden fleece. The king of Colchis said no and told him to leave. But then his daughter Medea walked in and all at once fell in love with Jason. He would do anything for him. She begged her father to give up the fleece. Okay, said the king. I'll give you the fleece, if you do my challenge. In the field of acres there are 2 bulls. Harness them, and you can have the fleece. Jason said yes to this challenge. Medea told Jason to come to her room. He walked up to Medea's room. Medea told him the 2 bulls weren't just any bulls. They were bronze, fire-breathing bulls. She told him she would help him survive if, and only if, when he claimed his kingdom, he would marry her. Excuse me? Said Jason. He thought he must have misheard. Take me back to Ilochus and marry me, she said again. Jason was stunned. Yes, I'll marry you, he said. Good, said Medea. Okay, you'll need a way to survive their fire breath. She took a couple of potions off her shelf. Before you go, put this on you, Medea said. It will make the fire feel like a slight wave of heat on your skin. Also, you'll need a yoke strong enough for that those bulls can't get out. She handed him a yoke beaded with iron. This'll do. Well, that's it. Jason walked out, still stunned from Medea's earlier words. He walked into the field of acres to do his deadly task. He rubbed the fireproof potion all over his skin and weapons. He dropped his yoke and sword at the bottom of the hill and brought only his shield. He walked up the hill and heard a loud rumbling sound getting louder and louder. A large cloud of dust appeared. Jason held out his shield. The bulls slammed into his shield again and again. Once they realized that wasn't working, they breathed a cloud of flaming fire onto Jason. The potions were working. He didn't feel a thing. The bulls were very surprised that their victim was not dead on the floor. So they tried ramming him, but Jason was so strong he held the shield right at the bulls. The bulls were frantically ramming into Jason's shield again and again, but they couldn't defeat their mighty enemy. Jason grabbed their horns and started pulling them down the hill. At the bottom of the hill, he held both bulls on the horns with one hand, and with the other grabbed his yoke, and tied the bulls together. He pulled them over to the fence and tied them on the fence. The yoke was so strong, even they couldn't get out. Medea was right. The iron-beaded string held them amazingly. Jason went into the palace and heard the king of Colchis, Hades, talking to his servants. They told him that Jason had done the task. Hades was infuriated. He told his servants to kill Jason. Jason realized Hades wasn't going to hand over the fleece. Jason, Medea, and the gang ran over to the tree where the fleece was hung. The dragon came out. I got this, said Medea. She walked up to the dragon. She pulled a bottle out of her dress and threw the liquid inside it onto the dragon's nose. The dragon fell asleep. It's a sleeping potion, she said, but it won't last long on a beast that big. I don't have any more. Jason climbed the tree. The dragon was waking up. Hurry, said Atalanta. He grabbed the fleece and jumped down. They started running. The dragon was wide awake now. It launched its neck toward them, about to have them all in its mouth. They just made it. The dragon's head slammed to the dirt. It lurched its neck back towards itself. As they were running with the fleece back to the Argo, Medea's younger brother, Absitris, came out. Please, Medea, please take me with you. No, said Medea. Please, please, please. Not a chance, you little pest, Medea yelled. You can tell she's not very fond of her little brother. If you don't let me come, I'll tell Daddy where you are. Fine, you can come. They ran to the Argo. Horseback soldiers were following them. Hurry! Atalanta screamed. They arrived at the Argo and took off. They were safe. So they thought. King Hades was behind them on his boat. Curse you, Jason, he yelled. Bring back my fleece! Absitris, what are you doing in that ship? Medea, you convinced my most loved son to go with you. Medea, you were always my least favorite daughter. Hades' ship was getting too close. They weren't going to get away. Medea knew what she had to do. She took a knife out of her pocket and walked over to her brother Absitris, and cut his head off and threw it in the water. King Hades cried and moaned. His most beloved child had just been slaughtered. He stopped the boat to collect his body parts as memories. He fished out his head. He fished his head out of the water and started hugging and kissing and crying on it. "Curse you, Medea, you evil witch!" Though Medea's act was of no sort the right thing to do, it did let Jason and the rest of the Argo make an escape. They were on their way back to Iolcus. They had to take a different route so Hades couldn't follow. They had to take a route that none would ever want to take, the route of the Sirens. The Sirens are evil mermaid-like creatures that sing a song so pretty that no sailor can resist. So they try to steer their ship toward them, but they get shipwrecked by the rocks trying to. Only one person has ever crossed. Up on Mount Olympus, the gods were trying to find out how to prevent Jason from getting reeled in by the Sirens. Hera came up with an idea. She called down to the people in the Argo. "Only listen to my voice," said Hera. "I will sing a song." "Ignore the siren song and just listen to mine," said Hera. "If you don't, you will surely die." The ship was approaching the sirens. Hera started singing. Everyone on the Argo started singing along to Hera's song to block out the sirens. All the Argonauts could hear a different song in the background, the siren song, but they ignored it and kept singing along with Hera. But Volos couldn't resist. He couldn't take it. He had to find out what the siren sounded like. Just for 1 second, he thought. Then I'll go back to listening to Hera's song. He listened. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. He had to get closer. He jumped into the water and started swimming towards the voice, but the currents pulled him under the water. If the other Argonauts helped him and stopped focusing on Hera's song for just 1 second, they would die too. So they didn't help Volos. The ship was past the sirens and they were safe. It was a safe path back to Iolcus now. They sailed through storms and rough seas. Jason was so excited for soon he would be the king of Iolcus. They arrived at Iolcus. Jason and the crew walked out of the ship and met an old fisherman. He walked out onto the stand. You're Jason, the one who set out on the quest for the fleece." "Guilty as charged," said Jason. "No, Jason, sir, you really don't understand. Something really bad has happened." "What is it?" said Jason. "It's hard to say. It's okay, just tell me." "Okay," said the fisherman. "So your mother and father were in the dungeons." "I know," said Jason, "and when I'm king, I'll let them out." "You don't understand. They were in the dungeons when they heard how long you were taking to come back. So everyone thought you were, well, dead." "Well, they're in for a big surprise then," pronounced Jason. "Sir, you really don't understand. They thought you were dead, so they decided to have another baby to replace you." "I don't mind," said Jason. "I would like a baby brother." "Yes, sir, but when the king of Iolcus, Peleus, found out about the baby brother they had, he, did something quite horrible." "What did he do?" said Jason. "He took a knife and splattered your baby brother's brains on the floor." "Oh," said Jason, starting to cry. "That's not all," said the fisherman. "Your mother and father thought that they had no children left, so they both committed suicide." Jason was infuriated. If he had just been there, maybe he could have saved his little brother and his parents. He was so mad that he wouldn't have anyone to congratulate him for his long, long journey. He was so mad that he almost tore up the fleece. Golden wool was everywhere. Jason now realized that Peleus didn't mean what he said. He wasn't going to give him the kingdom. He expected Jason to die on the journey. He was so mad. "Peleus must pay!" screamed Jason. "I have an idea," said Medea. "When you see torches on the roof, the kingdom will be ready for taking." Medea set off toward the kingdom. She was dressed as an old lady. She would be perfect for the job because she was magic. She walked into the throne room, guards pointing weapons at her. "What do you want, old lady?" said King Peleus. "That's no way to speak to someone who comes in the name of the gods," said Medea. "You come in the name of the gods," said Peleus. "Prove it." "Okay, I will," said Medea. "Get me a pot of boiling water." Peleus nodded in approval. The servants brought Medea the water. She took an old sheep and showed it to everyone. 13, the magic number," she said. She took a knife and cut the sheep into 13 pieces and threw them into the pot. "Now watch as I call upon the gods to make this sheep young again." She took some potions that would form a young sheep out of nowhere and throw them in the pot, but no one saw her throw them in. She reached her hand in and pulled out the sheep. Everyone gasped. They thought she just turned the sheep from old to young. The gods feel bad about the passing of your son last month, so they want to make you young again so you can have more children. Peleus nodded. Now, I'm going to give you a sleeping potion so this doesn't hurt, said Medea. Peleus tried to be young again, nodded. Peleus fell asleep. Medea asked the servants for a new pot of water. They brought one over. She asked Peleus' oldest daughter if she would cut Peleus into 13 pieces. She nervously took the knife and started cutting him up. When she had cut 12 pieces, the last piece was to cut was the head. Peleus' body was now in 13 pieces. 13, the magic number, said Medea. She threw the pieces into the pot. It started to boil. Now, said Medea, there's one more step to make humans young again, she said. She led Peleus' daughters up to the palace roof. She lit 5 torches on the roof. Jason and the others saw the torches. It's the sign, said Atalanta. All the guards were so amused by Medea that they weren't guarding the palace, so Jason and the others could walk right in. All the people were ready for Peleus to come out of the water young again, but Medea was gone. They realized it was all a trick. Jason and the others walked in. The crew had no problem killing the guards because the guards put their weapons down while watching Medea. Jason sat on the throne. He was now the king. Jason! Jason! Atalanta came rushing into the throne room. The people, they don't want you as their king. They're charging toward the kingdom. They're breaking open the doors. The villagers swung axes at the palace doors. You need to leave, said the old lady in the corner. They were too busy to notice her. Long ago, your mother gave you to me when you were just a baby, and I used a secret exit to get you out safely. Back of the palace, the cupboard door, is a secret entrance. You'd best get going, said the old lady. Jason, Atalanta, and the gang ran over to the cupboard. The villagers were banging on the throne room door. Hurry, said the old lady. They opened up the door and ran in as quickly as they could. They saw a light at the exit. The villagers came charging into the door, but Jason and the others were way past gone by the time they arrived. Once outside the city, they adventured their way back to the Argo. There seemed no reason to remain together any longer. Sadly, the members of the crew split up. Jason thought of the many adventures they had. Jason and Medea sailed to Orchomenos and hung the fleece among the many other treasures for all to see. Finally, Jason married Medea like he had promised months ago. After the long journey, Medea finally became queen of Colchis because Hades had died and she was the only part of the family left. The villagers were happy to take her as queen and Jason as king. They lived happily married for 10 years. But after 10 years, Jason fell deeply in love with a young princess named Glaucias. He forgot all about his promise to Medea and how much she had helped him along the journey. He wanted Medea out of his life. He wanted to just be him and Glaucias. He wanted a divorce. Medea was infuriated. She was filled with jealousy and hatred. She loved Jason so much. After all she had done for him, how could he? How could he banish her from the kingdom? Her kingdom! She wanted revenge, and she will have it. Before she left, she left Glaucias a wedding gift. How thoughtful, said Glaucias. Don't open until the wedding, said Jason. Nonsense. She started tearing open the gift. It was a diamond-beaded crown. It's beautiful, she said. She put it on her head. Ah! She screamed. What is it? What's wrong? Screamed Jason. But all she could say was screams. The crown was digging into her head. The potions that Medea added were sinking into her skull. Jason jumped down to help her, but the crown burst into flames. Medea had added flame enchantments. Glaucias was now an inferno of flames. The flames were spreading within seconds. The throne room was covered in fire. Jason backed into a corner. The flames were all around him. He prayed to the gods. Hera didn't want to help him. He had been so mean to Medea. But then Hera thought back to how he so kindly carried her across the river. Fine, thought Hera. She created a window right next to Jason for his escape. Jason didn't wonder for a second why a window randomly appeared out of nowhere. He didn't care. He climbed out the window. He was safe. But the kingdom and all the people in it were destroyed. There was no kingdom left for him to rule. Medea took the Argo and sailed to different lands. Never did she stop loving Jason. Never. She didn't ever find happiness again after that. Soon after that, Medea passed away. Jason was very old. He crawled over to an oak tree and slowly drifted to sleep. He thought of his long journey. He thought of the king of Lemnos smiling. He thought of Atalanta demanding the sail, the harpies, the cyclops. He thought of the feasting they had had and all of his friends that were killed on the journey. He thought of Medea, beautiful, beautiful Medea, smiling a wicked laugh. Then was the fire bulls racing across the field. Then the bull started to fade into a dragon, launching its neck toward them. Then there was Peleus. He thought of Medea, bewitching Medea, killing his brother. Jason was very old. He crawled over to an oak tree and slowly drifted to sleep. Thoughts of his long journey came to him. He thought of the queen of Lemnos smiling. He thought of Atalanta demanding to set sail, the harpies, the cyclops. He thought of the feasting they had had and all of his friends that were killed on the journey. Then he thought of Medea, beautiful, beautiful Medea, smiling a wicked laugh. Then there were the fire bulls racing across the field. The bulls started to fade into a dragon, launching its neck toward him. Then there was Peleus. He thought of Peleus and imagined him killing his baby brother. He remembered Chiron's words: fame and glory, a long, long journey, pain, tragedy, a chance to wear the crown. As he was sleeping, a branch from the oak tree broke off and hit him in the head and killed him. The end. Made by Jack and Juliet, grades 4-5.